Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. My name's Kyle. Today we're going to be talking about GMOs, the pros, the cons, and how they affect human beings. So let's take a journey.
Today we're here to tell you about genetically modified organisms, better known as GMOs. GMOs are plants or animals created through gene splicing techniques of biotechnology. This experimental technology merges DNA from errant species, creating unstable combinations of plant, animal, and bacterial viral genes that cannot occur in nature or traditional crossbreeding. Most developed nations do not consider GMOs to be safe. In more than 60 countries around the world, including Australia, Japan, and all of the countries in the European Union, there are significant restrictions or outright bans on the production and sale of genetically modified organisms. Increasingly, Americans are taking matters into their own hands and choosing to opt out of the GMO experiment. One concern many people have with GMOs is, are they labeled? Unfortunately, even though polls consistently show that a significant majority of Americans want to know if the food they're purchasing contains GMOs, the powerful biotech and lobby has succeeded in keeping this information from the public in the absence of mandatory labeling. The Non-GMO Project was created to give consumers the informed choice they deserve.
Now that you know what GMOs are, we're going to tell you the cons of GMOs. One downside of GMOs includes creating super weeds that have evolved a resistance to glyphosate, which is a common herbicide in GMO food production. Wow! Another con about GMOs is plants that produce their own insecticide, a bacterial toxin, Bacillus thuringiensis, which has led to Bt-resistant bugs. Gee whiz! The third con of GMOs is that it produces allergens and toxins. Some genetically modified foods can contain higher levels of allergens and toxins, which have a negative effect on the personal health of those who eat them. This may be especially dangerous for people with serious food allergies. Insane!
Another con of GMOs are their antibiotic resistance. Because genetically modified foods are often developed to fight off certain pesticides and herbicides, there may be an increased risk that people who eat those foods may be more resistant to antibiotics. That's really weird.
Although GMOs seem like they're all bad, there are some positive things we do have to talk about with GMOs, and we like to call them pros of GMOs.
Some of the many pros of GMOs are resistance to pests, which lowers usage of pesticides and overall lowers crop contamination and water supply contamination by pesticides. Resistant to powerful herbicides, which allows farmers to cut down from multiple applications of herbicides, sometimes a single application. Resistant to many plant disease-causing fungi and bacteria that can sometimes affect entire crops. Various climate resistances. GMOs resist cold temperatures by being introduced to an antifreeze gene found in cold water fish. Since a lot of areas of land aren't very crop sustainable, GMOs are able to resist long periods of drought or water with a high salt content, making crop production possible in virtually any land previously thought to be inhospitable.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so we talked about what genetically modified organisms are. We gave you some pros as well as some cons. And now, to wrap things up, I'm just going to give you all a few different examples. Okay, so our first example of genetically modified organisms is corn, BT corn to be specific. It's a form of sweet corn that has been genetically modified to include an insect-killing gene. This means the farmer doesn't have to spray the pesticides because the insects die from eating the corn. No spraying means less harm to the environment and less harm to the workers because they do not have to come in contact with the pesticides. However, this move has caused debate because the same gene that's included in the corn to kill insects is also killing off monarch butterflies. So like I said, there's some controversy surrounding BT corn. Okay guys, so our second example of genetically modified organisms are tomatoes. Tomatoes were actually the first genetically modified organism, but since then they've been modified again for one reason, to last longer. GM tomatoes do not rot as quickly as regular tomatoes, so they can tolerate longer periods of transportation. Genetically modified tomatoes also can be left to mature on plants longer, rather than being picked while they're green. And this results in a more tasty tomato that does not need to be stored until ripening. The original genetically modified tomatoes were resistant to antibiotics. This raised concerns that the gene might be passed on to humans, making us more resistant to antibiotics and in turn less capable of fighting infectious diseases. According to the proponents of this modification, this would reduce fishing wild salmon, in turn protecting both the wild population of fish and the environment from human intrusion. Ironically, the major concern in the production of genetically modified salmon is its impact on the environment. Although the genetically engineered fish is supposed to be sterile, meaning that it cannot reproduce, experts believe there's no way that they can be sure, because DNA tends to mutate over time.
GMOs. What can you tell me about GMOs? Do you know anything at all about them?
Genetically modified organisms.
Okay. What can you tell me about them?
Pros, cons. Pros would be farmers can skip steps and still have more product, more yield.
Mm-hmm.
There's medicinal things with it. The more they grow,
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to be healthier, it's supposed to be more nutritious, tastier. Cons of those things only been around for about 20 years, so we don't really know how it affects human beings.
Okay.
You know?
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Can y'all tell me what y'all know about GMOs? Do you know what they are? Do you know what it stands for? What does it stand for? Cool. Thank you.